purest form. And that's going to be a higher level of learning Torah. When you think of it that way, they had a very good argument. It's like somebody would say, I don't want to just study the mashal. I want to know the deeper meaning of the mashal. Well, that's true. That's the better understanding. So what was Moshe Rabbeinu's response? His response was, it's true that it's deeper. It's true that it's more spiritual. It's true that it's closer to the essence of the wisdom. But the ultimate purpose of creation was Hashem wanted a dwelling place in this world. And therefore, Hashem wants us to study and to observe the mitzvah of honoring parents in the most physical way, physical parents, not the concept and the spiritual understanding of it. And the same is with all the mitzvahs. Of course, there's a deep, deep wisdom in eating matzah, in shaking the lulav and the esrog, in the blowing of the shofar. But Hashem wants us to blow a physical shofar, a horn of a physical animal, and to shake the physical lulav and the esrog, and to eat the physical matzah, because that's the ultimate purpose of creation. And of course, from this, we have the understanding of how precious it is whenever we do a mitzvah, even if we don't understand all the depth behind it, we know that there's tremendous depth, and we know how far we are from really understanding it and relating to it. But the ultimate purpose is the physical act of observing this mitzvah. Like Shavuos, the physical act of going to shul, hearing the reading of the Aseret Adibos without physical ears, and making kiddush, drinking physical wine, and eating physical challah. This is all how we observe Hashem's mitzvahs. So from this, we'll go over to the other question, which is really a very, very deep subject, but we'll try to explain it, briefly and at least then simplify it. Was the story in Gemara where they heard Hashem himself speak, and it said the halacha is like Rebbe Lezer, and then Rabbi Yeshua got up and said, no, the Torah was given here on earth. Torah lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. And we have to judge it according to the majority of opinion of human beings in the Sanhedrin here on earth. And we ask the question, how could that be? If there's a heavenly voice that's saying that this is the truth, how could we say, no, we're going to vote on it, and we're going to go by majority of opinions different than the heavenly voice? So the answer is, again, briefly, that the truth is, just like we explained, that there's the wisdom the way it is understood in the heavens, and then there is that same wisdom, the way it's manifested here on earth, and the way it plays out with physical parents, physical actions, and physical things. That, in a sense, they're both, the wisdom there is the same, and it's true, but in heaven, and in the spiritual realm, we see things differently. And in the physical realm, we see things differently. To give an example, we're approaching Shavuos, which is the yahrzeit of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a very famous, maybe the most famous saying of the Baal Shem Tov, which the Rebbe made this, publicized this as much as possible, repeated it probably, not an exaggeration, thousands of times, that the Baal Shem Tov said, he asked Mashiach, Emasai Kosi Mar, when will you be coming? And he answered him, when your well springs will be spread all over the world. However, there's a story attached to it, and the Rebbe doesn't mention the story, but when we look at the source, we see the story behind it, the background to this story. And the background is that the Baal Shem Tov said it was Rosh Hashanah night, the year Tov Kuf Zayin, which I guess is 46, and he made Aliyas Neshama, which means he ascended to the high heavens, to the spiritual worlds. And he saw a tremendous simcha, tremendous joy, and he had no idea what this joy was all about. all those around him were urging him to go to a higher place in the spiritual realm, in the heavens. And the Baal Shem Tov said, I never went there and I was afraid. And I said, I'll only go there if my teacher will come along with me. So the teacher came along with him. Together they went up to this highest place. And finally he entered the chamber of Mashiach. And then the Baal Shem Tov says these words which are shocking. He saw such joy that he never ever saw and experienced in his life. And he was wondering why. And then a thought occurred to him, maybe it's because he passed away and now he's joining them. And that's why there's such joy. But then they told him, no, that's not the reason. On the contrary, Hashem is very happy with what he's doing here on earth and so on. But what shocked me was that's the reason why he saw unprecedented joy. I mean, this is the biggest tragedy if a tzaddik would pass away. How could there possibly be joy up there from the fact that he passed away and joined them? And again, I can't help say it again that it's a very deep subject, but I'm just going to give a certain general perspective. When a person asks a question, what's better for the neshama? When it's down here or after the neshama leaves and goes up there? And the truth is there are two angles to this. On one hand, the neshama wants to be here in this physical world to observe the mitzvahs and everything else. On the other hand, when the soul goes up to heaven, it's in a higher place, in a spiritual place, in a more pure place, in a truthful place. Doesn't have to deal with all the difficulties and all the challenges here in this physical world. And therefore, in a certain way, it's a certain benefit for the soul. So this is the difference between heaven and earth. Hashem created heaven. In the heaven, he created angels. There are souls that are in heaven. And on earth, he created us humans of flesh and blood. In the heavens, their goal is to see that things should be more and more spiritual, more and more closer to the spiritual. On earth, our mission is to make this world, this physical world, a dwelling place for Hashem. So therefore, in the heavens, they see the advantage, and the more spiritual something is, and the higher it is, and the more away it is from the physical and material, it's higher, it's better. And we see the opposite. There's a story in Gemara which also reflects this, that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was very sick, and everybody was praying for his health. And then it came a point where they saw that it looks like this is going to be the end. And the rabbis came out with a statement, and they said, no one should say the words that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi passed away. Whoever says those words, they'll be stabbed with a sword, whatever that means. Then it happened. He actually passed away. But no one was able to go out and say those words. So one of the sages got up and said that the angels in heaven, they overcame us here on earth. As if to say there was some sort of a tug of war. They were pulling Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi to the heavens, and we were pulling him down to the earth, and they defeated us. And that's also the similar question that the angels, why would they want such a thing? We're not talking about negative angels, talking about angels, our holy angels. Why would they want such a thing? And the answer is because the angels in heaven, this is their mission. They see the greatness of heaven, of spirituality. And therefore, they saw the advantage of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi being up there. Our mission is earth, and to see the advantage in earth and the physical world, bringing godliness down to this physical world. That's our mission. And therefore, we do everything we can that a person be healthy and live a long life and do mitzvahs in the physical realm. And both are true, but that's from their perspective, and that's the way they're supposed to see it, and we're supposed to see it from our perspective. And the same applies to all the halachas. When there was a heavenly voice that came out and said the halacha is one way, and then the rabbis say, no, the Torah is not in the heaven, the Torah is on earth. It meant as follows. From a heavenly perspective, judging by those values, yes, the halacha should be a certain way, because that's consistent with the idea that the spiritual is greater and higher, and we have to see to it that things are more and more spiritual, and more removed from the physical. But the Torah was given to us on earth, and therefore we have to judge by what the human mind understands and how the majority of human minds of the sages perceive it, because that's better for things here on earth. And therefore, we have to judge the way things are in the physical realm. So both are true. And when Hashem heard that the Bezdin ruled, Hashem smiled and said, Nitzchuni, Bani Nitzchuni, my children have defeated me, which means Hashem was actually pleased. That's what he wanted. There is a perspective, the way we see things in the spiritual realm, but our goal is and our mission is to bring godliness down to this physical world. And therefore, Hashem was very pleased to hear that the Bezdin ruled the way they did rule, in a way that it benefits the physical realm. I want to go from here to another subject. I know in a classroom this would have been easier. You'd be able to be more give and take and questions, but we'll do the best we can under the circumstances. So I want to go to another subject, and that is, again, let's refer back to the Gemara. And in the booklet that you have, it is page 9. At the bottom of the page, the second column, it says, Darish Ahug Lila Aled Rab Chizda. There was a certain Galilean, meaning a sage from there, from the Galil, and he lectured in the presence of Rab Chizda, and he said, Brich Rachmana, blessed be Hashem, Yoav Eraiset Lisar, that he gave the Torah, which is made up of 3 parts, La'am Lisar, to a nation that consists of 3, Ayidei Lisar, through a person who is the 3rd, B'yomet Lisar, on the day which is the 3rd, B'yarchet Lisar, in the month which is the 3rd. What he's bringing out is that there's something about Torah that's connected to the number 3. It was given in the 3rd month, Sivan. It was given on the 3rd day. They were supposed to have 3 days of preparation, and the Torah was given on the 3rd day. The Torah itself is made up of 3, because the Torah has Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, which is the Chumash, the prophets, and the Ksuvim, which are of the later writings. In addition to that, Moshe Rabbeinu was the 3rd, meaning to say he was the 3rd in his family. And then there are other commentators who add more things. That Moshe was from Shevet Levi, and Levi is the 3rd. The word Moshe itself has 3 letters, Mem, Shin, Hey. The word Levi has 3 letters, Lamed, Vav, Yud. We're a nation that come from 3 forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Moshe Rabbeinu, in order to be able to be in this world in a healthy way, his mother had to hide him for 3 months. Again, the number 3. We have 3 prayers a day, Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. The nation consists of Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, everything around the number 3. So we need to explain what is so significant about the number 3, which just seems to imply that number 3, this sort of characterizes what the Torah is all about, number 3. So the answer is as follows. If you look at the first page, which has the list of topics, number 12 says, Kimu ha'oves kol ha'Torah kula achele nitna. Our forefathers, they observed the entire Torah even before it was given, which means Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who are prophets, and they knew and they're able to perceive what all the mitzvahs of the Torah are. They already observed the mitzvahs even before the Torah was given during their lifetime. So the question is, if that's the case, what is the difference between the mitzvahs that they observed and the mitzvahs that we observe after the Torah was given? That means once the Torah was given, it wasn't such a novelty. It was already observed by Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they certainly told their children about it. So the observance of mitzvahs and the study of Torah already existed. What was so unique and unprecedented about the Torah being given? On the surface, it almost seems like, well, before a few people were doing it, now everybody's doing it. But clearly, Matan Torah was something unprecedented, something new completely. So the answer is like this. It says in the Medrash, there's a pasuk. If you want to look it up, it's in the booklet on page 35. It's a pasuk of Shir Hashirim, and it says, L'reach shmanecha tevim, which means the odor of your oils, your perfumes are very good. Shemen turak shmecha. Your name is like pouring oils. So the Gemara says, this is alluding to the difference between the mitzvahs that we observe and the mitzvahs that our avos observed. When they observed mitzvahs, it was like the odor of perfume. When we observe mitzvahs, it's like taking perfume or oils and pouring it from one vessel to another vessel. What is the difference? What is obviously a metaphor for something? What is the metaphor? And again, the Medrash gives a mashal based on another pasuk. Pasuk in Tehillim. We also say this in Hallel. On the list, it's number 16. Hashemayim shemayim laHashem va'aretz nasan l'bnei adam. The heaven was given for God, and the earth was given for humans. What does that mean? Before the Torah was given, heaven and earth were two separate realms. And the Medrash uses the analogy of a king who made a decree that the people from Rome can't ascend, can't go up to Syria. The people from Syria can't go down to Rome. And that's the way it was before the Torah was given. Heaven is in heaven. It can't descend to earth. And earth is on the earth. It can't ascend to the heavens. There's a partition between these two realms. They can't really merge. They can't come together. Once the Torah was given, what happened was that this decree was lifted. And now the king said the people from Syria could go down to Rome. The people from Rome to go up to Syria, meaning heaven could descend to earth and earth could ascend to the heavens. And that's why it says in the pasuk when Hashem gave the Torah, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, and God descended on Har Sinai. You could look at page 27, you'll see the pasuk. So God descended from the heavens to the earth. On the other hand, it says Vayal Moshe, that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven. So one from earth went up to the heavens. What does that mean in simple words? Heaven and earth, which means the spiritual realm and the physical realm, godliness and physicality are two different things. There's no way in the world that they could come together. It's like somebody would say, I'm holding this concept in my hand, which doesn't make any sense. You can't hold a concept in your hand. The hand can hold physical objects, but not a concept. So the spiritual realm and the physical realm don't mix, don't merge. And therefore, when the Avos observed the mitzvah, they brought down godliness to this world, but it didn't really merge. And after the mitzvah was performed, that godly light and that godly presence didn't last. To use an example, during the day, the sun is shining. And when the sun shines, the room is lit up, especially if it's really a bright sun. The room is bright and shining with the light of the sun. Comes at night, it gets dark. Why? The sun was shining for hours and hours during the day. Why doesn't it linger on? Why doesn't it stay there? And the answer is because the sun is shining, but it never became part of that room. And therefore, once the sun leaves, the light is gone. Very different than a teacher and a student. When a teacher teaches a student, once the teacher walks away, the wisdom that the teacher shared with the student isn't gone. It's in the student's head. The student absorbed it and now knows it and has it. So therefore, it's permanent. It stays with him all the time, which means when a teacher teaches a student, it penetrates internally and it becomes part of my brain, becomes part of me and stays with me forever. When the sunlight shines in a room, it doesn't really connect in a deep internal way. And therefore, after a while, it's gone. When the Avos observed mitzvahs and brought godliness down to this world, one of the examples are given. It says that when Yaakov Avinu was doing what he did with the sheep, if you remember the story, that he took twigs and he peeled it, made it look like stripes, and that had an effect on the sheep. It says in the Zohar, Yaakov wasn't just making stripes on a twig, on a stick. When he was making those stripes, that was the same thing that we do when we put on tefillin. Spiritually, he was accomplishing the same thing. He used a different object, but in the spiritual realm, he was drawing down that same godly light. But guess what? Once he finished using that twig, he could just throw it away. When we use the leather for the tefillin, it becomes holy, and you're not allowed to throw it away, which means the holiness and the godliness penetrates and becomes one with it. But before, when they did the mitzvahs, it was like the sunlight. It came, it was there, but it didn't penetrate, it didn't merge. And that's what it means that there was a decree that there's no merging between heaven and earth. And after the Torah was given, it all becomes one. So technically, they might have eaten matzah on Pesach, but what it accomplished spiritually was it brought godliness down in a spiritual way, but didn't really connect to the physical realm. And now, when I'm sitting at my Shabbos table and I make a bracha on the wine or on the challah, the godliness that's brought down into the room penetrates the very walls, the floor, the ceiling, the table, the chairs. The physical room absorbs godly light and becomes transformed. And ultimately, with all Jews doing all the mitzvahs all over the world for the 3,000 and over 300 years since the Torah was given, the whole world becomes so transformed that brings Mashiach into the world. So this explains the significance of number 3. Originally, there was one, that's Hashem. There was no world. Then Hashem created a world, so now there's two. There's Hashem and there's the world, but they're not one. When the Torah was given, there was a third thing that was introduced, that Hashem and the world merge and become one single entity. And that's the significance of number 3. Number 3 represents this merger of heaven and earth, and that is really the essence of what the Torah is all about. If you look on the list, number 19, it says, Koel Godav Lo Yosef. It's a pasuk in the Chumash. On page 33, you can see the pasuk. And the Gemara says it means Hashem's voice when he gave the Torah was so powerful, there was no echo. And the question is asked, why is that displaying Hashem's power? If naturally there should have been an echo, there should have been actually a very loud echo. What's so great? Why did Hashem make this miracle that there's no echo? Obviously, there must be a purpose for that miracle. And based on what we just said, it's understood. An echo is a result of speaking in a room where my voice is not absorbed and it bounces off the walls. When Hashem gave the Torah, he revealed to us what really happens when we study Torah, that the words penetrate the physical surroundings, the physical world. So therefore, when Hashem said the Aseret Hadibros, every every word penetrated the mountains and everything around them, and therefore there was no echo. There's nothing to bounce off. It was all absorbed into the physical surroundings. Naturally, in the future, we don't see that because then there'd be no free choice. Imagine you're standing in a room and you say words of Torah and there's no echo. Then you talk about sports and suddenly there's an echo. You talk about the weather, there's an echo. You go back to Torah, there's no echo. If we would see so clearly the difference between words of Torah and everything else, there'd be no free choice. So right now, everything looks the same. But when Hashem gave the Torah, he revealed to us, we should see what Torah is all about. It's about penetrating and transforming the physical, and Torah words being absorbed in the physical, and therefore there was no echo. I'm going to go to another subject, and that's on the sheet on page 2, from number 25 to number 32. There's a statement in Gemara, which on the surface is also sort of a shocking statement, and that's number 25 on the sheet. The Gemara says that Torah is like a drug. That's the term that they use. Zachaloi, if a person merits, nasisloi sam chaim, it become, we know that a drug could either bring life, people's life could be changed and healed through drugs. But there are also drugs that are poison and they destroy, God forbid, a person's life. So the Torah is like that kind of drug. Zacha, if one merits, nasisloi sam chaim, becomes a drug of life. Loi zacha, if a person doesn't merit, nasisloi sam mavis, it becomes a drug that brings the opposite of life. How could Torah bring the opposite of life? How could something so holy like Torah bring the opposite of life? It's sort of a contradiction of terms. Torah is all about life. So let's look at number 27. Also a statement in Gemara goes like this. If someone will tell you, Chochma yesh bagoyim, that the nations of the world have wisdom, Timon, you can believe them. There are people out in the world, in other nations, that are brilliant and have amazing, amazing wisdom. But if someone will tell you, Torah yesh bagoyim, that there's Torah amongst the nations of the world, al Timon, don't believe them, because that doesn't exist. What is the difference? Torah is wisdom. Anybody can sit and study Torah. And the answer to this is, especially when we study Tanya, it becomes so clear that Torah is not just wisdom. What defines Torah is that it's God's wisdom. It's a godly wisdom, which means we've compared the wisdom in Torah to a capsule. When you take a medicine, you swallow a capsule. What you see is the capsule. What you're holding in your hand is the capsule. But the real medicine is not the capsule. That's just a container. What's really potent, what's really strong is whatever is inside the capsule. The wisdom in Torah is a container. It contains Hashem's presence. And the purpose of Torah is to embrace Hashem, to connect with Hashem. And how do we connect with Hashem? By absorbing his wisdom, which is Torah, and in his wisdom, his presence is found. In fact, the first words of the Aseret Adibros, the 10 Commandments, first word is Anochi. And the Gemara says that word Anochi is an acronym for 4 words. Those 4 words are also on the list, number 32, where it says, Ana nafshi ksavis Yehavis. I have written myself up and invested myself in writing. Hashem says, I invested myself in the Torah. In other words, the essence of Torah is that this is Hashem's wisdom where Hashem invested himself. And by me studying and learning and absorbing and internalizing the wisdom of Torah, I'm internalizing and embracing and bonding with Hashem himself. And that's
I'm
the main.
sorry, what is the fourth word? Ana nafshi.
Ana nafshi, I, my soul, Ksavis have written, Yehavis have invested, put in. In Aramaic, this is Aramaic. Aramaic, Yahav means to give. Hashem said, I gave myself, I invested myself in the writings of Torah.
Thank you.
And this explains also something in Gemara, where it talks about the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. And one of the reasons that are given is, why was it destroyed? They actually observed mitzvahs. They learned Torah. What was so wrong? And one of the reasons that are given is, on this list, number 28. Shlei Baruchu b'Torah tchila. They didn't make the blessing before they studied Torah, which is shocking. Okay, they didn't make the blessing, but they studied Torah. So just because they didn't make the blessing, therefore there was such a severe consequences. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and the Golus. And the answer is, it's not about the fact that they just didn't make the blessing. In the blessing, we say, thank you, Hashem, Nosein HaTorah, the giver of the Torah, number 29. In other words, before we study Torah, when a person studies Torah properly, we're engaged in the intellectual aspect of it. There's a question, there's an answer, there are dialogues, there's research, and I'm in it intellectually. What am I supposed to be thinking that I'm connecting to Hashem? That's before I begin. While I'm studying and while I'm engaged in the intellectual interaction, I can't be focusing on that. I have to focus on the intellectual aspect of it. But before I start, I sort of say to myself, and that's the purpose of the bracha, that the whole purpose of Torah and the purpose to engage now intellectually is really to absorb and to embrace Hashem's presence. And then I start studying Torah. And that thought that I have at the beginning will be in the back of my mind, guiding me all along as I study Torah, to remember this is not just an intellectual experience, and not just something which is intellectually stimulating and pleasurable, but this is connecting to Hashem. In that generation, even though they studied Torah, but it was not the right way. And they focused more on the capsule than on the essence of Torah, which is they focused on the intellectual aspect of Torah, the fact that it's so intellectual and brilliant and intellectually stimulating, and they love the learning. In other words, there could be a person that enjoys science, a person who enjoys math, a person who enjoys philosophy, because they're enjoying and appreciating the intellectual aspect of it, learning and understanding. So there could be someone who studies Torah in the same way. They're loving and enjoying, and they're inspired by the intellectual aspects of Torah, but that's wrong. We study Torah has to be because we're connecting to Hashem. And therefore, when it says that the Torah is by Yidden, not in other nations, the wisdom part of the Torah, everyone could have, anybody. Jew or non-Jew could sit down and study and learn the wisdom and the intellectual part of the Torah. But that connection to Hashem, that was given, the Torah was given to the Jewish nation. And when we learn Torah, we absorb that godliness and we connect to Hashem. And that's the difference. If a person studies Torah the right way, and when they study Torah, they're bonding with Hashem, the Torah refines them, makes them a better person, it makes them a more humble person. And they're always going in the right track because they're focused on how can I become closer and deepen my bond with Hashem. When a person engages in Torah study and they're focused more on the intellectual aspect of it, not the godly aspect of it, then they could chas v'shalom deviate from what the Torah is all about, get involved in the intellectual part of it, and sort of be creative with their own ideas. And unfortunately, throughout history, this happened. Many people who were brilliant Torah scholars, but then they deviated from the path of Torah. They deviated from the purpose of Torah because they just follow their intellect and it brought them further and further. It made them more perhaps arrogant and brought them further and further away from Hashem. Like one of the examples are Yerovim ben Nevat. He was a king of the 10 tribes, and he was the one who created this big divide in the Jewish people. And he forced the people in the 10 tribes to worship idols. He didn't allow them to go to the Beis Hamikdash. And unfortunately, he himself violated Torah, and he caused hundreds of thousands of people to go against Torah. But the shocking thing is, the Gemara says he was a brilliant, brilliant Torah scholar. In one place it says that all the Torah scholars in that generation, compared to him, would be compared to like a blade of grass compared to a person. Imagine, so brilliant in his Torah knowledge. But his Torah knowledge didn't bring him that closeness to Hashem that should have been. On the contrary, it made him more arrogant. And the Gemara tells us a story that one time Hashem said to him, I am asking you to do tshuva. And if you do tshuva, I promise you that me, you, and King David will walk together. It's a metaphoric way of saying, but whatever it is, obviously it's a tremendous spiritual reward. And he was, of course, he had his own kingdom, and the other kingdom was the kingdom of King David. So he said to Hashem, when we walk together, who's going to walk first, me or King David? And Hashem said, Ben Yishai, King David will walk first. He said, if that's the case, no, that was the deal breaker. If he's not going to walk ahead, he's ready to give up this great privilege to be walking together with Hashem, which was his arrogance. And how is it that studying so much Torah didn't make him more humble? Because he was focused more on the intellect of it than on the spiritual aspect of it. So therefore, as we're approaching Shavuos, and we're all getting ready to receive the Torah, we should realize that the main purpose of Torah study is to connect to Hashem. Because when you study Torah, you are embracing godliness, which is in the words of the Torah that you're reciting, or in the thoughts of Torah that you're thinking. And that's really the main purpose. And what if a person says, but what if I'm not on that level? I don't feel that. I really feel excited about the intellect part. I love it. It's challenging. It's stimulating. I know I should be focusing on my connection to Hashem, but should I stop learning and wait until I get to the point that I appreciate the Torah exclusively for the right reasons, based on what we just said? So there's another beautiful quote in Gemara. It's also here on the page, number 31. Mitoich shaloi lishma ba lishma. Which means when you learn Torah not for the ultimate reason, for some ulterior motive, ultimately you get to learn Torah for the right reasons. Which means, and this is what the Gemara says, a person should always study Torah, even if they're not studying it for the right reasons. But study the Torah, and ultimately from there you'll get to the point that you'll be studying it for the right and the purest of reasons, which is to connect to Hashem. So therefore we shouldn't be discouraged, and God forbid, definitely not abandon Torah study because I'm not on the right level, the right place. Because when you study Torah, even if you're studying it because you enjoy the intellectual part of it, nevertheless, from there you'll get to the place that you'll love and you'll appreciate studying Torah for the right reasons. And there's even a more beautiful, deeper interpretation to these words. And the Rabbi says as follows: Miteich shaloi lishma, teich means inside. Inside that shaloi lishma, when a person studies Torah and they're not really feeling the right motivation, but deep inside they're doing it for the right reasons. Their soul loves Hashem, and the soul really feels that every word of Torah is bonding with Hashem. So even though on the surface I might not be doing it for the right reasons, but deep inside the right reason is there. Whenever I teach this, the question always comes up, but aren't there people that have been studying Torah for all their life and they're still arrogant and they never changed. And we don't see that learning it for the wrong reasons eventually brings them to get there for the right reasons. I think the answer to that is that it's true that if you learn Torah and not for the purest of reasons, it'll get you eventually to the right place. But that's if I want to work on that. What if a person learns Torah and they learn it because intellectually it's stimulating, it makes them very proud of themselves, it makes them feel superior to other people, which are all the wrong reasons, and that's where they are. They aren't even interested in developing the deeper spiritual motivation for studying Torah. Then it's not going to come. If I study Torah for the superficial reasons, but I want, and I ask Hashem, and I want to eventually get to the place where I'll be appreciating and feeling the right motivation for studying Torah, then the Torah guarantees us that ultimately you'll get there. Because deep inside, that's really your essence. Inside that place where you're studying Torah, not for the purest of reasons, inside you're really studying Torah for the right reasons, and therefore the Torah has its true value. So ultimately, we need to remember that Torah is chachmasai or ritzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not just wisdom, it's godly wisdom. And therefore, even a person, like sometimes you meet someone who says, I don't have time to study a lot of Torah, and therefore I'll never become a real Torah scholar. Is there any point in studying Torah 5-10 minutes a day? And of course, the answer is absolutely. Study as much as you can. That's the halacha. But could you imagine if a person who's passionate about science, passionate about math, tells a science teacher, I love it, but I don't have any time. And he'll say, study a science book 5 minutes a day. Nobody would say that because studying something 5 minutes a day will never get you anywhere. You'll never become a scientist. You'll never be able to really broaden your knowledge from 5 minutes a day. Torah is different. The purpose of studying Torah is not just to become a scholar, to have the title of scholar. When I study Torah, I'm bonding with Hashem. And even if I recite one verse, one Mishnah, I learn 1 minute of Torah study, I am bonding with Hashem. And therefore, it'll be a drug that brings life and not, God forbid, the opposite. Okay, we'll stop here.